Hello everybody, I'm back to do a video that's a little bit different. I'm going to be cleaning this very dirty keyboard. And as I'm cleaning the keyboard, I'm going to tell you a little story. And this is something that I've thought about telling on my channel before, but I just didn't find the right time and place. You know, I don't have a lot of juicy drama or gossip in my life anymore. I'm an adult, so it's a little different, though adults very much still can have things like that. But in my life, I don't. But I've got a story for you that involves my next door neighbor. Before we get into the story, I'm going to show you the selection of items that I've collected to clean the keyboard today. Now, the first item are these little cotton pads, and I'm not quite sure where or how I'm going to use these. I thought maybe I could use them in conjunction with these popsicle sticks by wrapping it around the tip and using it in the crevices here. In addition to those two items, I also have a little collection of Q-tips that I will hopefully be able to use to get in between the keys. I also have some Clorox wipes. I might do that to do a general wipe over. And then I have this universal dust cleaner. This is a fun gel-like slimy thing that you roll over the keyboard, and I've never used it before. I saw it on a YouTube video, and so I got some. So we'll see how good it does. I tested it out, and it certainly does pick up debris. Don't know if this is a little bit too dirty for that one item, which is why I got those other ones to help us on our task. All right, I dug this keyboard out from the back of our garage. That's why it looks so dirty. So we're going to start with the universal dust cleaner, I think. That's what we'll do. I'll do a go over with that, and then we'll get a little bit more intricate with going in between the keys. So let me tell you my story. Now, we've lived in this house for over 3 years. You all remember when I moved here, I had talked a lot about it, did some show and tell of things, and that first month that we lived here, okay, so this was in 2016, that first month, I met our next door neighbor. And I met other neighbors before we actually moved in, and they're very kind, very sweet, and welcoming. And two of them warned me about this particular neighbor who is right next door to us. And they warned me by saying, they said basically, be careful what you tell her. She likes to gossip a lot. You should just stay away, stuff like that. And I thought, I can handle that. I'm fairly comfortable with people who are high needs in that way, or people where you need to be boundaried with, and I can usually spot that. But anyway, so I finally meet this woman. She's older. She's in her 70s or late 60s, but she looks much older than her actual age. And I had met her. I had invited her into the house to show her the work that we had done. She was very friendly. And sure enough, she started talking about basically all the gossip on the street. You know, this person Now her husband died this many years ago, and this person behind you, oh, he's a hoarder. He had a girlfriend. I'm not sure what happened, but yeah, watch out. He's a hoarder. This person over here, now they're gone a lot. They have 2 kids, and so on and so forth. And all was well. It was very cordial, and I thought, oh, okay, like all seems fine. And so then a few weeks go by. She sees that I have a lot of cardboard that I'm trying to dispose of because we were getting new furniture, and like this table we're on right now is from IKEA, so lots of boxes like that. And she saw me outside, so she said, oh, you can use my recycling bins, and she was so friendly. Now, let's back up because I realized I forgot to tell you an important part. When she was over at the house and I was showing her the work that we were doing, we went into the backyard and I told her that we wanted to build a fence between our house and her house. It's very difficult to describe, but her house is a very, very large Victorian house, and our house is very, very small, built in 1942. And for some reason, the way that they built it is that there's no fence, and it's very difficult to identify just from the naked eye where our yard begins and where hers begins, so the property lines. So anyway, I had told her, oh yeah, we're gonna redo the backyard and we're gonna build a fence. And she said, you're gonna build a fence? And I said, yeah, we're gonna build a fence. That's, we just want some privacy and to make a visible line between the 2 yards. And she said, oh, don't build a fence. And I said, I think we will. If we can, we're going to build one. And that was the end of that conversation. Now we fast forward back to, a couple weeks later, she's offering her recycling bin. She's telling me all the tools that they have that we can borrow if we need them. And that was it. One day I come home from work and my husband's gone at work and I'm here by myself. Actually, there was one of the guys who was working on the kitchen was here just finishing up last minute things. And I'm in my room, which is in the back, and I hear her at the front door. We have a screen door. And I heard her asking the worker, where is she? Where is she? And so I came out from the room and I said, and I went to the door and I said, what's going on? And she started screaming in my face. And I am not exaggerating when I say screaming in my face. She said, you're not building a fence. I'm on my way to the fire department right now. And she had her purse and she was almost shaking with how angry she was. And she just kept repeating, you're not building an effing fence, and you don't know you don't know what you're doing, and I'm going to the fire department and I'm going to report you. Now, it's kind of hard to convey how upset she was with me talking so softly. Kind of doesn't do it justice, but it was very, very aggressive, borderlining on violent. And this is so strange because literally just a couple days before, she was happy as can be, trying so nice, offering offering this and offering that, even though all the while, she was obviously brewing on the fact that we were going to build a fence. So my jaw dropped. Literally, my jaw fell and dropped as I stood there, and she went on her tirade. And I was so dumbfounded as to why this was so upsetting for her. So I asked her after she was done yelling, I said, "Why don't you want a fence? What's so bad about having a fence?" And she was so mad and she could barely speak, and she just basically said, "It's bad for my foundation. You're gonna attract the roof rats." That's what she calls squirrels. And yeah, she was unable to vocalize specific and like valid reasons why. So she just said, so she yelled in my face, and I said, "Why don't you want a fence?" And she said what she said. And then she goes, "So, are you still going to build a fence?" And I said, "Yeah, if we legally can, yes, we are." Well, that just sent her over the edge, and she said, "Fuck you, I'm going to the fire department right now." I said, "Okay." It was so upsetting and so out of the blue, and at the time I was feeling so much stress because we were buying our home for the first time. We got, work done on it. I was managing most of it because of my husband's job. He wasn't available as much as I was. So I was so stressed, and she's older than me, and I felt like I wanted to be respectful. Obviously, this was before. So, needless to say, I was just dumbfounded, and I went and I called my mom to talk about what happened, and I texted my friend to talk about what happened, and I was just so in shock at how she basically just flipped a switch and felt that it was okay to speak to somebody like that in their own home. So we finally did more research, and it come to find out we were not able to build a fence due to fire code. Now, this is something that I didn't even know. Like, when I had told her we wanted to build a fence, we had not yet investigated whether that would be okay, if we would need a permit. We hadn't even got that far. So when I was telling her, "Oh yeah, well, we want to build a fence if we can," I don't know if she knew all along that it wasn't allowed and thought we were going to break the law. I don't know. So I figured out that, well, it turns out we can't. Okay, that's okay. That's kind of shitty, but whatever, we'll deal with it. So for several days, I was very upset because this woman is my neighbor. We bought this house, so we're invested in staying here, and it feels so uncomfortable living right next to and seeing of this person daily. So finally, a few days go by, and I told my husband, I said, "I need to talk to her because this was so inappropriate and unacceptable, and she needs to know that behaving that way is not okay with me." So, like I said, for a couple days I was thinking about it, and so we pulled up I think we had gone to Target one morning, and she was out front of her house, and I said, "All right, I need to go talk with her." And my husband said, "Do you want me to come with you?" And I said, "Nope, I can go by myself." This was a conversation between her and I. And so I went up to her and I told her, I said, "It is not okay to talk to me that way and to behave that way in my own home. I don't know where you learned to communicate like that, but when it comes to me and my family, you are not allowed to behave that way. If you come on my property acting like that again, I will call the police. So as I'm saying this to her, it was so strange because it felt like I was chastising a child. And when she flipped out on me on my porch, it was like a child throwing a tantrum. And so perhaps that's why I felt the need to go talk to her and set a boundary so that she knew that that's not okay. So I told her, what I just said, but I was very firm when I was speaking with her and very angry, but respectful. I was not cruel or derogatory at all. But I just said, what a shame. We moved here and we're neighbors, and what a shame that you acted that way and that this is how it has to be now. And I said, we're not going to build a fence. But then I kind of went on to saying, if you ever talk to me again like that, blah, blah, blah. And she cut me off and she said, okay. So that was that. And come to find out, after speaking with a few other neighbors, she told several other neighbors then told me so many stories about this woman. This woman has lost renters. The bottom part of her Victorian is a rental unit, and they have witnessed full-on arguments out front between her and the renter. So renters have left due to her temper and how she behaves. This woman has no relationship with her children or grandchildren because of blown out fights, tempers, etc. And she's married to a man that was an alcoholic and was very quiet. I'm not kidding when I say I've only heard him speak 2 or 3 times, and it was small things. It was very nice. It was very nice. It was things like, I like your dog, or we have bird seed in the front yard, and my husband was refilling it one morning, and he said to my husband, thank you for doing that. I love to watch the birds, because he would sit out on the porch and smoke a cigarette. So needless to say, since I then found out all these tumultuous relationships that she had, and that the lady who lived here before us, she was a renter, she lived here for 10 years, had major problems with her, to where the police were called. I just was shocked. I was so shocked. So anyway, I had told her that we did not speak for a very long time. Every time I saw her, I would try to avoid her if I saw her outside. And we do not have a lot of space between our yards. And her kitchen window looks directly into our backyard. It's a very strange layout. And so I never felt like we had privacy. I would see her watching us in our backyard. I would see her husband peeking out through the window watching us. She watched all along. When we were getting the yard done, she would always watch to figure out what we were doing. When the construction workers were working on the house, I wasn't here, and she actually came in here. They later told me she came in here and was asking them, what work are they doing? This woman thinks that she has a sense of ownership over, this street, this neighborhood. She has been here a very long time. She grew up in the house that she lives in. So I'm not sure. But anyway, let's continue on. So we did not talk for a very long time, and it was very uncomfortable. I never had a situation like this before, even with apartment living and things like that. It was never this. Yeah. Anyway, so eventually certain things, she sees me out front and she says, "Hi," nice as can be, as if nothing happened. And I'm, nice back. We do live by each other after all. And fast forward even longer, her husband he has a drinking problem, or did have a drinking problem, and we would witness him obviously intoxicated outside, and she would be trying to get him to go back in the house, or she would try to basically coax him back in, try to feed him, just basically taking care of him. And that was sort of it. One day when my son was young, I was here and my son was taking a nap, and I saw her come up to my door, and I thought, here we go. Mind you, she has not been to my house, on our front yard since. And she came over here, and I opened the door, and she was shaking and crying. I thought that her husband hit her. I thought that she was coming over here for help to escape, because I don't know, that was just what I thought. So she was looking around as if it wasn't safe to talk out on the front porch, and I invited her and I said, "Are you okay? You can come in." And she came inside and she basically started bawling, telling me that her husband had some very aggressive form of brain cancer and was just given 4 months to live, and that he was going to die, basically, they were going to do chemo, but this cancer was so aggressive, and at the stage he was at, it was basically a lost cause. And I stood there wondering, why was she in my living room telling me this? And not in a mean way, but I was so struck by the difference between how, basically, why did she come to me to tell me that? And but of course, as she was telling me, I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, are you okay?" And she was so dysregulated, she was shaking, her face looked terrible. It was very strange, and I just finally asked her, I just said, "May I give you a hug?" And she kind of just looked at me and said, "Yeah." And so I just hugged her, and we stood in my living room with me hugging her and her bawling hysterically. And I saw in her a softness and deep, deep pain. And of course, when somebody is suffering, at least I am there for them. You know what I mean? Yes, she is such an unhappy woman and was very, very cruel and had broken so many relationships in her life. But in that moment, it's still not clear to me why she wanted to come over here and tell me that. And so I just comforted her and asked if we could help. Could I drop any food off? She's diabetic and has emphysema and other health problems, so she has a lot of food restrictions, and so she said no to food or anything like that. And she said she had one friend. I was shocked, although I had seen this woman over there sometimes had bringing her soup or something, but she said no, she didn't want any help. And I offered to help out with her dogs if she was at the hospital for a long time, because they were starting chemo, Anyway, long story short, her husband, shortly after that, was taken away via ambulance 2 times. And the second time that it happened, I happened to be pulling up in my car, and the fire truck was right there with the ambulance. And she saw me, and her and I kind of made eye contact from afar, and I just put my hand on my heart to show her that, like, instead of waving. And she just sort of half smiled at me. And since that time, her husband has passed away, and she is like a different person. I've never experienced this. I just can't explain it. She is like a completely different woman. She is kind. I mean, she's still rough around the edges. That's just how she is. She's very rough around the edges. That's all that how to describe her. Or, you know, those people that have a chip on their shoulder and they hold and embody that with the way that they approach the world and people. That is like her. But she came over once. She wanted to let us know that she was getting the house painted, and that the painters were going to have to use our backyard access. And I asked her, she was telling me, oh, they're here, they're going to do this, they're going to do that. And I just kind of stopped her and I said, how are you? You know, her husband died just a few months ago. And she said, oh, I'm fine. She said, you know me, trying to stay out of trouble. So she was acknowledging her, you know, how her tendency to be is. So that's sort of the end of my story. I know it's not that juicy. I'm sorry. But you know, as of today, we don't have a relationship, but it's cordial. It's kind. I'm kind, and she is overly nice to me now, and asks about my son, and then tells me that the best years of her life were raising her daughters, and even though she doesn't seem to talk to them much. But so I don't know if she was so unhappy with her marriage, or if in her grief she is softened because she's grieving. I don't know, and I guess we won't ever know. But the bottom line is that I think it was a lesson for me in the beginning, especially when she was so, I was going to use the word violent. It was not physically violent, but it was verbally violent, cussing in my face, basically like, who the F do you think you are, all over a fence. When just a couple days before, she was smiley and kind. And now I should have prefaced this whole thing to say that I believe that there's obviously mental health things going on. It's clear to me that she was not medicated. I don't want to go and diagnose her, you know, without properly assessing her, but I can guess what she struggles with. But I just, it's not for me to say, but I can assume. So, I mean, I can tell. But anyway, and I don't know if now she's medicated or what, but it was a lesson for me as, you know, as learning how to stand up and to somebody who is a bully and is aggressive, and set boundaries. I mean, I've known how to do that for a long time, but you know, I've never dealt with it with somebody in the community or a neighbor, somebody that wasn't a family or friend, where there was already an established history. So this was practice for me, you know, and as a homeowner, how to stand up for my rights and things like that. So anyway, and also to do that with loving kindness. Now, when I don't think that I was all hippy dippy and lovey this whole time, because I wasn't. I was very upset. I was enraged, and I was, angry and like, who the F does she think she is that she can just go off on me like that? I certainly did feel lots of defensiveness, and I talked about it, with my husband and my friends, and I really processed it. And then, of course, when it came down to dealing with it, I was proud of myself to be able to basically, it's a boundary, instill that boundary, let her know that's unacceptable, that behaving that way may have worked for her in the past, but it will not work for me. So, and then here we are, a couple years later, and even though we never spoke after that, she comes over and starts crying to me about her husband. So it's very interesting. And it has been, I think it just overall, the purpose of this story is to share with you lessons that I learned, and maybe a reminder for all of us. How can we respond to conflict or high conflict people in a way that is grounded, is firm and setting boundaries, but also not cruel or hurtful or violent? And it's not like I'm perfect. Please don't think that's the case, because that's not true. So I'd love to know what you think. I'm sure many of you have had experiences like this, either with neighbors or other loved ones. So please tell me about it. I'd love to hear about it and what your thoughts are on my story overall. Now we've got this keyboard. It's as clean as it's gonna get, I think. This is the level of dirtiness where I should probably remove each key and clean it individually. However, that's not going to happen. So this is the best we're going to get, and you're going to see this soon in another video. Thank you so much for joining me, all of you. Big hugs to all of you. I'll see you next time.